I'm sure you've all heard the old saying, if at first you don't succeed, try again. No, don't steal my line there, Nancy. When Solomon wrote his Proverbs, most of them he wrote to his sons. In fact, some of them, at the beginning of the books, the chapters, you see, my son, do this, my son, do that. And so it is as if Solomon is saying, if at first you don't succeed, do it the way your father told you to. But we all know that God is really the author of Proverbs, and he has used Solomon as his writing instrument to write it down for us. So really, God is telling us through the book of Proverbs, if at first you don't succeed, try doing it the way I told you to. So as we've continuing through our series in Proverbs, we are in Proverbs. This is part 7 of our series. We're going to jump ahead to chapter 18. As we've seen already through our series, Proverbs is chock full of heavenly wisdom for earthly living. And as we've worked through these chapters, we noted that Solomon's writing style is more of a shotgun approach. Each chapter is just kind of all over the place. There's different words of wisdom covering different topics, and then he repeats himself a lot from within the chapters, and then from chapter to chapter. There's common themes throughout all these Proverbs. So as I've been gleaning through the chapters, it's trying to keep a new message each week. It's getting harder and harder the deeper we get into it, because he repeats himself so much. So that's why we're kind of jumping up to chapter 18 now. And today we're going to look at 4 don'ts. Now, the verses that I'm pulling out, he never really says the word don't, but the message is clear. He's saying don't do these things. So we're going to today look at 4 don'ts from Proverbs chapter 18. The first don't that we're going to see is don't isolate yourself. Don't isolate yourself. Proverbs 18 verse 1 says, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. Have you ever had times in your life when you've just had it with people and you just needed to isolate yourself and take some time away? I think we've all had that. That's not what Solomon is talking about here. How many of you are introverts? Would you identify yourself as introverts? Only a few of us. Wow. Most of the rest of you are extroverts? A little of both. You're kind of one of those borderlines. Our family is pretty much all introverts, varying degrees. And for introverts, if you're not an introvert, you may not understand this, but for introverts, being with people drains us. And so introverts need time away to recharge their batteries. Extroverts are just the opposite. Being with people recharges you. So for introverts, we need to get away and have that isolated time to recharge. And again, that's okay. We need that. That's not the type of isolation, that Solomon is talking about here. What he's talking about are those recluses, those people who just pull away from society, and it's usually because it's a very self-centered thing. They think that they know it all. No one compares to their knowledge, or their opinion is the only right one, and they don't even want to hear countering opinions. They don't surround themselves with wise counsel like Solomon has told us in the past. They're it. The whole world revolves around them, and they've just kind of withdrawn from society. And because of that, they don't seek out sound judgment. And as Solomon puts it here, they break out against all sound judgment. We weren't made to be isolated. We weren't made to be alone. And in fact, from the very beginning in the book of Genesis, God tells us that. Through Genesis, as God's creation unfolds every day, God creates and he says, this is good, this is good. Well, on the 6th day when he created man, he looked at it and said, it's not good for a man to be alone. So we were not made to be alone. We were made for fellowship. So we are not to isolate ourselves. In Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12, it says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, and has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Excuse me. We're not made to be alone. God wants us to fellowship with one another. He wants us to be in fellowship with Him. So don't isolate yourself. Don't isolate yourself from fellowship. We need fellowship with brothers and sisters in Christ. Together we can help each other stay on God's path. Together we can help each other fight the battles against the enemy. You know, the enemy loves picking us off when we're isolated. You know, if you watch in God's nature, in wildlife, you know, lions hunting deer or hunting caribou or anything they hunt, they tend to try to break them off, isolate them from the rest of the herd because they're easier to attack. Satan does the same thing to us. He wants us to be isolated because when we're isolated, then he can devour us. He can attack us. So we need, for our own protection, our own spiritual protection, we need to stay in fellowship with one another. Don't isolate yourself. Proverbs 18:24 says, "A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." So while it's good to have fellowship and have companions around, these surfacey relationships aren't going to cut it. We need some deep relationships. And guys, it's hard for us. I think women and kids have an easier time at making deeper relationships, and they're more prone to opening up and sharing their soul with one another. With men, we don't tend to be that way. We're kind of the Lone Rangers, and we can't keep people at arm's length. So we'll have all these great surfacey type friendships, companions, but no real deep friendships. If we have one or two real deep friends our whole life, then we're doing pretty good. So Solomon tells us here, we need to have that friend that is closer than a brother, someone who you know has your back. We I think have enough fair weather friends. You know, those people that we see once in a while, and you know, we kind of consider them friends, but when things go bad for us, they're nowhere to be found. Fair weather friends are a dime a dozen. That's not the kind of companionship that Solomon wants us to have. We need to have those types of relationships where we know that someone has our back, even when we blow it. They're going to be there for us. They're not going to pile on like everyone else is. They're going to be there to help defend us and to help encourage us to persevere and to get back on track. So we need to stay connected. We need to stay open to the counsel of others. And we need to stay in fellowship with our church family. Don't isolate yourself. Don't number 2 is don't crush someone's spirit. Don't crush someone's spirit. Proverbs 18:14 says, "A man's spirit will endure sickness, but a crushed spirit who can bear?" Most of us, and again, most of us men, I think, can take physical attacks. We can take illnesses. We can handle a fist fight and still be okay. It's not going to ruin our life. But when someone crushes our spirit, whether you're a man or a woman, if someone crushes your spirit, that's real hard to overcome. That can have a long-term impact on your life. In the book, Breaking Spiritual Strongholds and Healing the Wounded Spirit, Eric Gond writes, "A wounded spirit is injury to any area of our soul or spirit faculties, mind, emotion, and will. It is injury to the unseen areas of our being. The only way others can see the injury is how we behave and conduct ourselves. At least one area inside us may be more affected than the others. The deeper or more severe the wounds, the greater the negative effect on an individual's life, spiritually, socially, materially, and physically. I don't know if any of you have ever been wounded so deeply as to have your spirit crushed, but if you have, you know it's very hard to recover from something like that. You just kind of learn to live with it. And because of that, you put up a shield and you kind of keep everyone at arm's length, because usually the one who has crushed your spirit is somebody that you let in close. So those friends, those close friendships that we're trying to build, the flip side of that is you've got to be careful, because those are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. The ones who are closest to you are the ones who can do this crushing of the spirit. So you have to be careful. If you're one of those close friends, you've got to guard that. And even if that friendship drifts apart, you've got to maintain that sense of security, that you can't betray that friendship and the confidences that were shared during that time. Because usually the crushed spirit happens because of a betrayal of some kind. And parents can really crush the spirit of their kids because you're close, that close bond, and close friends can crush and destroy someone's spirit. So never, never, never betray a confidence. Even if the friendship drifts apart, you've got to hold that. Don't crush someone's spirit. Proverbs 18:19 says, "A brother offended is more unyielding than a strong city, and quarreling is like bars of a castle." You need to guard your friendships, because when you crush someone's spirit, the defenses go up, and you're into a battle. Trying to regain that trust, trying to regain the relationship is next to impossible. So don't let it happen to begin with. So don't crush someone's spirit. Don't number 3 is don't talk without first listening. Don't talk without first listening. Proverbs 8:2 says, "A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion." Proverbs 18:13 says, "If one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame." And then verse 15, "An intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge." I'm sure you've all known somebody who doesn't listen to you when you talk to them. You can tell by looking at them, they're not really making eye contact with you, and their mind is going, and they already know what they're going to say, and they're waiting for you to finish, or they're trying to think of what they're going to say, and they're not really listening. It's kind of disheartening, isn't it? When someone you're trying to talk to somebody and they're just not really listening. They just want to share their opinion and they don't care about yours. You know the old saying, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we'll listen twice as much as we speak. All right? So don't talk without first listening. I grew up, thinking, well, when I was real little, I talked a lot, as a lot of little kids do. And the way that was handled was I was told to shut up and that nothing I had to say was of any value. So as I got a little older in my youth, I grew up with the feeling that I had nothing of value to say. So I stopped talking. And then, because I'm stupid, nobody wants to hear what I have to say, so I stopped talking. Then as I got into my adulthood and started learning and slowly found out that people did value my opinion on things, so I would share a little bit and gain some confidence, and wow, I really do have something to add to the conversation. But then the pendulum swung the other way. Then I got really arrogant, thinking, wow, I really do have things to say, and people need to hear my opinions, and so I knew what you were going to say, and so I would finish your sentence for you. And, because, we have to be efficient about this and get this conversation rolling. And, well, I know what you're saying, so we'll just cut it off. I'll finish it for you and then go on. And so I was really living out Proverbs 18:13. If one gives an answer before he hears, it is folly to his folly and shame. And so people stopped wanting to hear what I had to say. So I had to learn that. It's part of the maturing process. So now I hope the pendulum is kind of more in the middle. I try to listen. I think I'm doing better at that. But because of my multi-potentialite mind here, my mind is always going on 20 different things at once. And it's the way it always works. Putting the message together and talking about listening and thinking maybe I've finally got my act together in this. And I came home from work, and Chris was telling me about a situation, and she said one sentence, and it was the bad part of the story. There was an arc to the story, but I just reacted to the first part. And she had to say, would you just listen and let me finish? And it's like, I had just written these words, and she hit me with that. It's like, okay, so yeah, I still have a ways to go. So I think we can all learn this one. Don't talk without first listening. In his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey, I don't know if you're familiar with that book. It's probably 20 years old or so, 25 years old maybe, but excellent book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Habit number 5 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And that's really kind of just a rewording of Solomon's wisdom here is don't talk without first listening. If you want people to listen to you, you've got to listen to them. They've got to feel like you understand what they're saying before they're going to understand what you're saying. So listen first before you talk. Then number 4, don't jump to conclusions. This little nugget of wisdom here is something that we need to keep being reminded of. And in our society today, I think the press really needs to be reminded of this. Proverbs 18:17, the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. How many times over the past 2 or 3 years, pretty much since the Trump presidency, have we seen the press, someone comes out and states their case first with some kind of accusation, either against the president or a Supreme Court nominee or somebody else in a particular party. As soon as the accusation is made, boom, the press is all over it. It's got to be fact. And then, of course, as the other person gets to put their case forward and get their side of the story, that we find out that the first accusation was incorrect. But it's natural. You hear an accusation. The first person comes and states his case, and you want to side with them because they do a good job. And as parents, I think we get to see this. Parents or teachers, anyone who deals with kids. Little Bobby comes in and says, "Oh, Billy hit me." And we want to feel for Bobby because that's not right. Billy should not be hitting Bobby. But as good parents, what do we do? What should we do? First, you ask Bobby, why did Billy hit you? But what do we usually hear? I don't know. I didn't do anything. So, the one who states his case first, Bobby, has our attention. And so our attitude toward Billy might be negative. But then after the I don't know, I didn't do anything, then a good parent will go to Billy and say, Billy, did you hit Bobby? And he'll either say no or yes, I did. Well, why did you hit? Well, because he hit me first, or he sprayed me with a hose, or he called me a bad name. So you get the other side of the story. There's always 2 sides to every story. So we need to not have this knee-jerk reaction as soon as we hear an accusation. And our founding fathers knew this. And thankfully, they put into our judicial system this concept of innocent until proven guilty. You don't just take an accusation and lock someone up. There's got to be proof. There's got to be, unfortunately, that kind of is an old-fashioned concept, isn't it? Because now we're tried in the press. Doesn't matter what the facts are. if the press latches on to this first thing to push their agenda, then and a lot of people just get on that bandwagon. But we need to heed Solomon's words. Don't jump to conclusion. The one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. We've got to examine all accusations. Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't just jump on the first thing you hear, the first one who states his case. We should never take the first person side of a story and run with it. We've always got to see both sides of the story before we make any kind of judgment. So those are the four don'ts of Proverbs 18. And Proverbs is filled with heavenly wisdom for our earthly living. God knew that he created us as kind of do-it-yourselfers. And I think especially in America, we're entrepreneurs, we're do-it-yourselfers. We have the John Wayne Lone Ranger mentality, and that can be a good character quality. But when it comes to living life and making up the rules as we go or doing it our own way, we can really mess things up. So again, through Proverbs, I think God is telling us, if at first you don't succeed, or if at first you go off and try it your own way, and it falls apart, which it will, try doing it my way. There's one nugget of truth that we can hang on to from Proverbs. Proverbs 18:10 is, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous man runs into it and is safe. People are going to hurt you. People are going to crush your spirit. People are going to lie to you or about you. We're going to have difficulties in this life. But one nugget of wisdom that we can hang on to is the name of the Lord is a strong tower. God will never hurt you. God will never crush your spirit. He'll never forsake you. He is a strong tower that we can run into and we can be safe. He's got your back. He'll protect you. God is with you, especially in the bad times. So the nugget I want you to take away from this is, if at first you don't succeed, try doing things God's way.